I was a guest MC last year for the Storyfest, and Mary Margaret Campbell, who I will introduce in just a second here, she is the executive director of Storyfest, and I told her as I was leaving, I said, you know, it seems like we ought to be doing some kind of a tribute to J. Frank Dobie, who is from Live Oak County. And she said, let's do it. So we jumped on top of this thing. Mary Margaret made it happen. And the whole idea of making this a benefit for the Dobie West Theater, I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. And y'all you're great people for coming out here and supporting this. It's a great, great thing. And we have got some amazing writers and performers and storytellers tonight. You're going to have a great time. And you can see the flare over at the refinery in Three Rivers. We were out here last night. It looked like Saudi Arabia. That thing was a mile high. We love the Eagle Ford Shell when they're being good to us. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce Mary Margaret Campbell. Are you around, Mary? Come up here. Here she is, wearing the green, the green, the green. Boy, I don't know anybody that works as hard as she does. Mary Margaret Campbell.
Thank you very much, Bill. And I'm overwhelmed at the response to this event. Thank you all so very much for coming. First of all, while we're thanking, we need to thank Albert and Mari Davila for letting us use this facility. We need to thank Beeville Publishing for also their sponsorship. We need to thank our cooks, Cody Campbell and Rodney Nance. Their #1 serving helper, Melissa Nance. We couldn't have this tonight if it hadn't been for our #1 grounds guy, grounds chairman, Thad Reagan. Thad. All of our board members, the board members who are here, Julie Causey, she's selling the beer. Jim McGee is here. He was also instrumental in helping us get this thing together. I just can't tell you how much it means to all of us that you're here and that we're donating to a wonderful cause. This theater, if you haven't been into the theater in town, you will be surprised. Come to Storyfest tomorrow. There will be some storytelling there in the theater and the ghost stories at night. And you'll be amazed at what they've done in such a really short time, relatively. And there's a little bit more to go, and tonight's going to help them get further along. Just thank you so much. You have a great show coming. Thank you, Bill.
I have kind of a roundabout connection to George West. My grandparents lived in George West, and Jeff and Alberta Martin, and my Uncle Tom Martin, and my Aunt Jean Martin, and Jeff Martin III, and Jeff Martin IV, and there's a lot of Martins around, and they're all my relatives. But I grew up coming to George West my whole life to visit with them, stay with them. We were reminiscing last night about Sunday school at the Baptist Church, the good and the bad. Some funny stories. My grandfather, when he was a young man, worked for J. Frank Dobie's uncle, Mr. Jim Dobie, and he thought he was the finest cowman he'd ever known in his life. And his brother, Joe Martin, managed one of the ranches for Mr. Jim Dobie down in Cotulla, near Cotulla in LaSalle County. And so when I was a kid, the Dobie books were always in the house, and I would pick them up and start reading, and I became addicted to the writing of J. Frank Dobie. He is truly the master South Texas storyteller, and we are really, really lucky to have him from Live Oak County. I mean, he is a legend. They're selling a lot of Mr. Dobie's books over there. The Twig from San Antonio came down, and they have a lot of his books on the table if y'all are interested in getting some on the way out. Be sure and check it out. We've got all of our writers and performers with their books and tapes over there as well. I want to read a little bit about J. Frank Dobie, just a little bit of background here, and I kind of lifted some of this off the internet. James Frank Dobie was born September 26, 1888. He died September 18, 1964. He was an American folklorist, writer, and newspaper columnist, best known for many books depicting the richness and traditions of life in rural Texas during the days of the open range. As a public figure, he was known in his lifetime for his outspoken views against Texas state politics and for his personal war against what he saw as bragging Texans, religious prejudice, restraints on individual liberty, and the assault of the mechanized world on the human spirit. He was also instrumental in the saving of the Texas Longhorn breed of cattle from extinction. That's quite a combination. Dobie was born in a ranch in Live Oak County. He was the eldest of 6 children. When he was young, his father Richard read to him from the Bible, while his mother Ella read to him from stories such as Ivanhoe and Pilgrim's Progress. At 16, Dobie moved to Alice, the county seat of Jim Wells, where he lived with his grandparents, finished high school. In 1906, he enrolled in Southwestern University in Georgetown, where he was introduced to English poetry by a professor who urged him to become a writer. While in college, he also met Bertha McKee, whom he married in 1916. Dobie began to publish his first articles in 1919 and 1920. He wrote articles mostly about longhorn cattle and life in the Southwest. Dobie left the faculty at the University of Texas to work his uncle's ranch in LaSalle County, north of Laredo, where he discovered a desire to put the rich experiences of Texas ranch life and Southwestern folklore into words. After a year on the ranch, he returned to the University of Texas and published his first book, A Vaquero of the Brush Country. Wonderful book. In 1930, Dobie published Coronado's Children, a collection of folklore about lost mines and lost treasures. This was followed by a series of books in the 1930s leading up to the publication in 1941 of The Longhorns, which I believe Bob Flynn will be reading from tonight, which is considered one of the best descriptions of the traditions of the Texas Longhorn cattle breed during the 19th century. During World War II, he taught American history at Cambridge University in England and returned to Europe after the war to teach in England, Germany, and Austria. He later wrote of his experiences at Cambridge in his book, A Texan in England, which I think John Philip Santos will be reading from tonight. On September 14th, 1964, President Lyndon Johnson awarded him the Medal of Freedom. Dobie died 4 days later on September 18th. His funeral was held in Hogg Auditorium on the University of Texas campus, and he is interred at the Texas State Cemetery in Austin. In 1959, Dobie bought a ranch 14 miles southwest of Austin, which he named Paisano, the Roadrunner. He used the ranch as a writer's retreat until his death. In 1966, the ranch was handed over to the University of Texas. Its mission was stated as Paisano will be operated by the university as a permanent memorial to J. Frank Dobie, and the primary use will be to encourage creative, artistic efforts in all fields, particularly in writing. It will be kept in its present more or less natural state, and the ranch house will be kept in simple style, very much as it was when Frank Dobie occupied it. 2 fellowships of 6 months each are awarded by a committee chosen by the presidents of the University of Texas at Austin and the Texas Institute of Letters. The applicants must be native Texans or Texas residents for at least 2 years, or persons whose writing is substantially identified with the state. Well, okay, we have some people here tonight who are Paisano, we're fellowship members out there, and I will introduce them. We do have a special guest tonight, a surprise guest. Naomi Shihab Nye is from San Antonio, and she's the author of over 30 books of poetry, prose, and literature for young adults. She's also in the visiting faculty of the James Michener Center for Writers at the University of Texas. Now, Naomi has brought some of her graduate writing students with her tonight from Austin, and my understanding is they meet at Mr. Dobie's old home in Austin every week. I'd like at this time to introduce Naomi. I'd like for her writers to come up here and introduce them as well from Austin. And if you would, Naomi, are you out here somewhere? Come on up. Okay.
Well, this is fantastic to be here with all of you. It's a great honor. And thanks to Bill and Mary Margaret and everybody who's put this together. It is a tremendous honor for those of us who get to meet in J. Frank Dobie's house every Monday for our class in Austin. I wanted to introduce the writers who've come down. They've just arrived in Austin, and they'll say their names. And then I'm going to tell a little story and read a poem. But it is so wonderful to be in his home and look at his own pictures on the walls. There are wonderful cases with his own books in them, and to have a sense of his spirit in that house where we meet every single Monday. So guys, if you just come up here and say where you're from. This is really one of their first outings away from Austin, and I would say this is pretty great.
My name is Abe Kugler. I'm a playwright originally from Seattle, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Hi, I'm Taylor Flory Ogletree. I'm from Atlanta. I'm a fiction writer, and I am really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Raina Hardy. I'm a playwright from Chicago, and it's really beautiful here.
Hi, I'm Flynn Berry. I'm a fiction writer from New York. Thank you for having us.
Hello, I'm Kareem. I'm a fiction writer at the Mystery Center from Boston.
Thank you guys for coming down. And Bill is kind enough to let me read a poem. Many years ago, I received a mysterious envelope in the mail from another icon of Texas, Maury Maverick Jr. And he said, I didn't know him personally, but I knew who he was, and he said, I would like to ask you to read my favorite poem at my funeral someday. Do you agree? And it was the poem, The Mustangs by J. Frank Dobie. I wrote back to Maury Maverick Jr. and said, I'd be happy to read it. I also love that poem, but it might help if we were friends first. So thanks to J. Frank Dobie and this poem, I gained one of the best friends of our lives, Maury Maverick Jr. And so this poem was present years later at his memorial. The Mustangs. I see them running from the Spanish caballadas to be free, from the Mustangers' rope and rifle to keep free, over seas of pristine grass, like fire dancers on a mountain, like lightning playing against the unapproachable horizon. I see them standing, sentinels of alertness in eye and nostril, every toss of maned neck, a Grecian grace, every high snort bugling out the pride of the free. I see them vanished. The seas of grass shriveled to pens of barbed-wired property, the wind racers and wind drinkers bred into property also. But winds still blow free and grass still greens, and the core of that something which men live on believing is always freedom. So sometimes yet, in the realities of silence and solitude, for a few people, unhampered a while by things, the Mustangs walk out with dawn, stand high, then sweep away, wild with sheer life, and free of all confines of time and flesh. J. Frank Dobie.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and thank you to all the graduate students, and I hope we're going to be buying all of your bestsellers here very soon. That's pretty exciting. I also, I've met just a couple, there's some Dobie descendants here this evening. Would you make yourselves known if you are a relation to J. Frank Dobie? I know I met one or two of you, and I know they're still here in the county. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your family with us. We're going to start off this evening with a performance.